I'm Camille Whitaker, 31 years old. And at my father's retirement dinner, my stepmother stood up at the head of the table and started handing out envelopes like she was a game show host. A thick cream envelope went to my stepbrother. A slim white one went to my stepsister. A folded card with a ribbon on it went to my father's longtime business partner. Even the caterer's assistant. A college kid nobody in the room had met before that evening. I got pulled aside and handed a gift card for helping with setup. I sat there in my navy dress, with my hands folded in my lap, watching envelopes move around a room of 30 people in a rented banquet hall in downtown Charleston. And slowly realized my name was not going to be called. Then my stepmother turned toward our end of the table, lifted her wine glass, and said, loud enough for the microphone to catch, "Oh, sweetheart, don't look so serious. You should just be glad your father let you come tonight." My Aunt Marlene, sitting 2 chairs down, let out this sharp, delighted little laugh and added, "Honestly, Camille, we weren't even sure you'd show up. You always make things so awkward." And the whole table laughed. Not a polite laugh. A real one. The kind where people lean back in their chairs and wipe the corners of their eyes. I didn't stand up. I didn't throw my napkin. I just looked down at my untouched plate, then back up at her, and said, very quietly, "Good to know where I stand." That should have been the worst moment. It wasn't. Because what people outside of families like mine don't understand is that those moments never actually begin at the party. They're the visible part of something that's been growing underground for years. In birthday cards that weren't signed by both parents. In group photos, where someone always moved right before the shutter clicked. In the way certain names get said a little warmer than yours. And exactly 8 days after that dinner, in the same people who laughed at me were on my doorstep in Mount Pleasant. Ringing the bell so hard, I thought the wiring would short out. Shouting my name through the glass because they needed me. Right now. Immediately. No. Please. Camille. Just open the door, and for the first time in my adult life, I didn't. Before I tell you what they wanted, and why they thought I owed them anything at all, let me know where you're watching from tonight. And what you're doing while this plays in the background. I always wonder whether stories like mine sound familiar in other living rooms. My father's name is Roland Whitaker. He ran a mid-sized commercial real estate firm in Charleston for almost 35 years. The kind of company everyone in town just calls Whitaker Group. Like, it's a landmark. My stepmother is Bianca. She married my father when I was 14, 2 years after my mom died. And she has spent every single year since then carefully editing me out of family photographs while insisting she thinks of me as her own. My stepbrother Declan is 29. My stepsister, Everly, is 26. And my Aunt Marlene, the one who laughed first, is my father's younger sister and has been Bianca's best friend since about 6 months into that marriage. If the retirement dinner had been a one-off, I might have just gone home, poured a glass of wine, and told myself, families are complicated. But that dinner didn't hurt because of a missing envelope. It hurt because it said out loud what the Whitakers had been saying under their breath for 17 years. I was not one of them. I was the one they called when something needed to be fixed. Photographed. Written. Hosted. Organized. Or paid for. Declan got heir. Everly got princess. I got Camille. Honey. Could you just... When I graduated summa cum laude from Clemson, my father sent a card. When Declan passed a certification test in his second attempt, Bianca rented out a rooftop. When I launched my own brand consulting firm at 27 and landed 3 Charleston hospitality accounts in my first year, my father called me and asked if I could quota throw together a little website, refresh, for the Whitaker Group. Nothing crazy. Maybe a logo update too. Since I was already set up for that sort of thing. That became the shape of me and the family. Already set up for it. Good at this sort of thing. Doesn't mind. For the last 4 years. Every fall. Bianca and Marlene had chaired something called the Lowcountry Family Legacy Gala. A black tie benefit that supposedly raised money for a local pediatric hospice. The gala was Bianca's crown jewel. She wore the same midnight blue dress every year and took 200 photos on a step and repeat with the Whitaker Group logo as a sponsor. What the society pages never mentioned was that I was the one who built the branding, designed the invitations, ran the donor portal, coordinated the vendors, chased down the sponsorships, and rewrote Bianca's opening remarks every single year because her drafts read like a high school book report. My name appeared nowhere. Bianca and Marlene would smile into photographs holding oversized checks, and I would be in the back near the AV booth in black jeans, making sure the live stream didn't crash. My father's retirement dinner was the first time they forgot to pretend I mattered while I was actually in the room. 2 days later, I saw Bianca's post on Instagram. A perfect carousel of the dinner. All warm bulbs and candlelight. Captioned, 35 years. 3 incredible kids. 1 beautiful family. Grateful, beyond words. The photos featured Declan, Everly, and my father. I wasn't in a single frame. Not cropped. Not zoomed past. Just absent. The way a chair gets absent when someone clears it away before guests arrive. Then I found something else. Everly had posted a story that same night. A blurry little clip from her phone, at her end of the table. It was only 9 seconds long. Half covered by somebody's wine glass. But the audio came through clean. You could hear Bianca's voice saying, "I'm glad your father let you come tonight." You could hear Marlene laughing. You could hear me, small and flat, saying, "Good to know where I stand." Everly had deleted it by the next morning. Probably because somebody told her to. But I had already screen recorded it at 1 in the morning when I couldn't sleep. I sat on the floor of my home office, with my laptop open across my thighs, and finally let myself ask the question I'd been dodging since I was about 19. Did my father actually love me? Or had he just married a woman who was willing to tolerate me as long as I stayed useful and quiet? Once that question was in my chest, I couldn't get it out. I called my best friend Sloane Delacroix, who has been my best friend since freshman orientation and does corporate forensic accounting for a living, which is about to become relevant. I didn't defend anyone. I told her everything exactly as it happened. The envelopes, the laugh, the caption, the deleted clip. Sloane was quiet for a long time. And then she said, "Camille, listen to me. They didn't panic when they hurt you. They're going to panic when they lose access to you. And they're going to call it something else. But that's what it'll be." That sentence sat in my ribs for the next 48 hours. So I didn't do anything dramatic. I did something methodical. I opened every single folder tied to the Lowcountry Family Legacy Gala. I looked at what was in my business name. I looked at what payment processors were linked to my LLC. I looked at which email addresses routed which forms, which Canva accounts owned which brand assets, which domains I had personally registered and renewed. And then I drafted one email. Short, professional, no emotion, effective immediately. I was withdrawing as a volunteer and vendor from the Lowcountry Family Legacy Gala. All design assets. templates, brand files, donor portal access, and vendor coordination would be transferred or revoked within 72 hours. Any continued use of my work, my company's payment rails, or my professional name would be unauthorized. I copied the event committee chair, the printing vendor, the florist, the venue, the AV contractor, and the hospice's development director. Then I blocked Bianca, Marlene, Declan, and Everly on every platform I owned. I left my father's number untouched, because something in me still wanted to see what he would actually do when he had to choose. Then I turned my phone face down and went for a walk along the water because I couldn't breathe inside my own apartment. Have you ever spent your whole adult life trying to earn softness from people who only ever rewarded your competence? Because once you see that pattern, you can't unsee it. The first person to respond was Everly. Of course it was Everly. Because Everly had been raised to soften whatever Bianca couldn't directly say. Her text came in about 20 minutes after the email went out. Camille, what are you doing? Mom is in tears. You're embarrassing the whole family right before the gala. Embarrassing. That word again. Their cruelty was always private. My reaction was always public. I wrote back. No, I'm declining to donate my labor to people who humiliated me in front of 100 guests. 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then nothing. 40 minutes later. The florist emailed me directly, saying she couldn't process the final deposit on the gala centerpieces because the billing portal was attached to my LLC's Stripe account. And she needed written confirmation that someone else was now the authorized payer. The printer wrote next. Then the AV contractor, then the venue coordinator sent a polite note, saying she'd always understood me to be the point of contact for the event, and was surprised to receive a resignation notice. Every single email made the same quiet admission. For 4 years, every professional person the Whitakers had hired had thought they were working for me. Not for Bianca. Because my name was on the contracts. Because my email answered the questions. Because my signature was on the approvals. That's when it stopped being a story about a missing envelope and started being something else entirely. Sloane came over that same night, with lo mein and a yellow legal pad. She sat on my couch with her hair in a claw clip and told me to pull every archived financial summary I had from the last 4 galas. We went through them together. She kept asking me weird questions. Like who had signed for which reimbursements, and whose credit card was listed as the backup on vendor accounts. Around 10:30, she set her chopsticks down and said, very gently, Camille, I don't want to alarm you, but your Aunt Marlene has submitted the same floral installation for reimbursement 2 years in a row under 2 different budget categories. And your stepmother has used the donor hospitality line to pay for what looks like a 3-night stay at a resort in Kiowa, plus a spa package, plus a dress from a boutique downtown that I can personally confirm is not a vendor. I just stared at her. Sloane kept going. She showed me a pattern of soft dollar skims. Not dramatic theft, but a steady trickle. A few $1,000s here. A few thousand there. Spread across categories that nobody except a forensic accountant with free lo mein would have bothered to line up. And because every digital record passed through my LLC's portal before it hit the hospice's books, copies of all of it lived in folders, tied to my business email. Not because I was spying, because I was the one doing the real work. The worst part wasn't even the money. The worst part was when I opened an old pitch deck that Bianca had used to solicit a major sponsorship from a regional bank 2 years earlier. And I saw my own design philosophy, my own brand language, my own event concept, presented as Marlene's vision. In the notes column of the exported PDF, there was a tiny little comment, left by Bianca during edits. Don't credit Camille. Keep her off the deck. Makes it cleaner. I read that sentence, maybe 8 times. Keep her off the deck. Makes it cleaner. That's a very polished way of saying erase her. But make sure we keep billing off her work. The next morning I emailed the hospice's development director, a woman named Harriet Volkoff. Directly. I was calm. I was professional. I told her I was stepping away from the gala immediately. That my name needed to be removed from all marketing materials and donor communications, and that I was attaching a list of the digital assets and payment rails I controlled so that the hospice could transition cleanly. I didn't accuse anyone of anything. I simply noted that I'd identified reimbursement patterns I could no longer associate my company with, and that if the hospice wanted, I would send a full, dated export of what was in my systems to whatever accountant they chose to bring in. Harriet wrote back in 14 minutes. Camille. Bianca told me 3 days ago that your involvement this year was purely ceremonial. I'd like to schedule a call. Purely ceremonial. I actually laughed out loud in my kitchen. Then the ziga began. My father called. Bianca called from 3 different numbers. Marlene left a voicemail that started with Camille. Sweetheart. And escalated to, you need to stop this little tantrum before you damage things you can't fix in under 90 seconds. Declan texted me a single line that said, you're better than this. By late afternoon, Everly sent me a string of increasingly panicked messages about how Bianca had locked herself in the master bathroom, and my father didn't know what to do. I did not respond to any of them. Instead, I did 3 things in careful order. I revoked my LLC's payment credentials from the gala's donor portal. I transferred ownership of the gala website to the hospice's IT director. I sent one last message into the Whitaker family group chat. I said, since I was reminded on Saturday that I should just be grateful you let me sit at the table, I'm sure you'll understand that I won't be handling the logistics of your gala this year, or any year going forward. Please direct further questions to anyone you actually respect. I muted the group chat and put the phone in a drawer. By Monday morning, the panic was not private anymore. Harriet Volkoff had evidently made some calls. The gala's donor portal was temporarily suspended because the hospice wanted to verify authorized signatories. A regional sponsor publicly paused their pledge, citing questions about event governance. Somebody on the committee apparently mentioned to somebody else that the event had been listed under my name for years on the state nonprofit filings. Not Bianca's. The Charleston Society Gossip Network is a very efficient machine. By Tuesday afternoon, Sloan sent me screenshots of comments under Bianca's latest Instagram post, which had originally been a very staged photo of her holding a glass of champagne. The comments were polite, because Southern women are nothing if not polite. But they were also surgical. Is Camille okay? My daughter worked the gala last year and said Camille ran the whole thing. Is she sick? Just heard the event is on hold. Praying for clarity. Bianca deleted the post by evening. Too late. Screenshots live forever. Then Bianca did what controlling women do when they lose their grip on the narrative. She started telling people I was struggling. She told my father I had been acting erratic since the dinner. She told Marlene I was probably having some kind of breakdown related to unresolved grief over my mother. Which was a particularly ugly choice because my mother had been dead for 19 years, and Bianca had never once spoken her name with respect. Everly texted me late that night. She said, Mom is telling everyone you're unwell. I don't think that's true. I'm sorry. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I wrote back one sentence. Do you know how long my name has been on the filings? She answered almost immediately. No. I said. Ask your mother. She didn't respond for nearly 2 hours. Then she sent, why didn't anyone ever tell me? That was the first honest question anyone in my family had asked me in 17 years. My father left a voicemail around midnight. His voice sounded tired. He said, "Camille, I think I've made some mistakes I didn't want to see. Please call me back." I didn't. Not yet. Apologies that arrive only after the fundraiser is collapsing don't count as apologies. They count as damage control. On Wednesday, Marlene escalated. She left a voicemail that I played 3 times because I couldn't quite believe it. She said, and I'm quoting as close as I remember, "Camille, this stunt is going to cost real people, real money. There are children at that hospice who are counting on us. You need to think about whose side you're on here." She used dying children. She actually tried to weaponize dying children to make me sign reimbursement paperwork that would cover up her own skimming. I forwarded that voicemail to Sloan. Sloan sent back one word. "Wow." Then she sent, "Save that. Don't delete. Eva." Thursday morning. My father showed up at the coffee shop 2 blocks from my apartment. He hadn't texted. He was sitting at the corner table in his blue sweater. The one my mother bought him the Christmas before she died. And he had 2 cups already on the table. One black. One with cream. Because he still remembered how I took it. I almost turned around and walked out. I didn't. I sat down. He looked at me for a long moment and said, "I watched the clip. Everly sent it to me last night. I didn't know it existed." I said, "It existed for 8 days before you watched it." "Dad." He flinched. He said, "I want you to tell me everything. Not the polite version. The real one." So I did. I told him about being called already set up for this sort of thing. I told him about the comment in the pitch deck. I told him about Marlene's voicemail. I told him that his wife had been running a quiet little hustle through a children's hospice fundraiser for at least 4 years, and using my name as the professional veneer. He didn't speak for a long time. Then he said, "I've spent 17 years calling your patient's maturity. I think it was actually exhaustion. And I think I knew. And I didn't look. Because looking would have cost me my peace. I didn't forgive him. I didn't tell him it was okay. I just nodded. Because at least he had stopped lying to both of us. Then he said, "They're going to come see you. All of them. Bianca is organizing it for Saturday. She thinks if you see her face, you'll soften." I laughed. Just once. Flat. I said, "Dad, I don't soften anymore. I think I stopped softening at the dinner." He said, "I know. That's why I'm warning you. They came Saturday afternoon. Not at dinner time. Not at brunch. But at 2:15, which is the hour Bianca considers most polite, for surprise visits. I was in yoga pants and a cardigan. Barefoot. Drinking coffee. When the doorbell went off 4 times in a row, followed by a fist on the glass of the front door. I checked the camera. All 4 of them. Bianca in a cream coat and pearl earrings. Lipstick reapplied for the occasion. Marlene behind her with a leather folio clutched against her chest. Declan looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Everly at the back. Pal. Her arms wrapped around herself. I opened the door with the chain still latched. Bianca's face did that thing where it crumples for exactly the right camera angle. She said, "Camille. Sweetheart? We need to talk. Please. Not out here. Out here. Because the neighbors." I unlatched the chain and let them into the foyer. But I did not invite them to sit. I stood with my back to my own living room. Arms crossed. Barefoot. And said, "You have 10 minutes. Marlene opened the folio on my console table without asking. Inside were reimbursement forms, sponsor letters, and what looked like a draft press statement. She said, "We need you to sign a clarifying statement that you're still involved in the gala in a strategic capacity. We also need you to co-sign these 3 reimbursements as the vendor of record. Harriet is being difficult." I looked at the paperwork. I looked at Marlene. I said, "Harriet isn't being difficult. Harriet is doing her job. And you are asking me to put my professional name and my LLC on documents that would make me personally liable for expenses I can now prove were never charitable." Bianca stepped forward with her hands pressed together like she was about to pray. "Camille. Honey. I was joking at dinner. It was a joke. You've blown this so far out of proportion." I looked at her. I said, "It wasn't a joke. You just expected me to absorb it. The way I've been absorbing things for 17 years, so that your life would stay smooth." Marlene made a scoffing noise. "Oh. Please. Spare us the therapy, speak." That's when something in my chest finally settled. Quiet and cold. I walked past them to my office, pulled a folder out of my filing cabinet, and walked back. I laid 3 documents on the console. The first was the exported PDF with Bianca's note about keeping me off the deck. The second was Sloane's preliminary summary of the duplicate reimbursements. Dated. Time-stamped. Cross-referenced. The third was the screen recording of the gala clip from Everly's Instagram story. I didn't raise my voice. I said, "I know about the Kiawa weekend. I know about the duplicate floral billing. I know my concept was pitched as Marlene's. And I have all of it. In export format. With metadata intact. Stored in 3 locations. One of which is not in this state." The foyer went dead silent. Everly made a small sound. Like a breath catching. Declan said, very quietly, "Mom? Is that true?" Bianca didn't look at him. She looked at me with an expression I had never seen on her face before. It wasn't anger. It was calculation. She was deciding whether to keep pretending. I watched her choose. She said, "Camille. Nobody is accusing you of anything. We just need you to help us clean this up quietly. We can handle the family stuff later." There it was. Fix the public mess. Feel your feelings on your own time. I said, "No." Marlene's face reddened. She said, "You are going to blow up a pediatric hospice fundraiser because you're throwing a tantrum about a comment at dinner." I turned to her. I said, "Aunt Marlene, I am not blowing anything up. I stepped away from something built on my labor and your lies. The only reason the gala is in trouble is because when you took my name off it, the irregularities underneath became visible. That is not my doing. That is gravity." Declan stepped forward. He said, "Camille, whatever they did, I don't punish the kids at the hospice." And I looked at my stepbrother, who had, to be fair, I've never been cruel to me. Just quietly comfortable in a house that treated me as staff. I said, "Declan, I already forwarded every document to Harriet Volkov. The hospice is going to recover every dollar your mother and aunt mishandled. Because I handed them the tools to find it. The kids at the hospice are fine. Your mother is the one who's in trouble. Don't confuse the two." That was the first time I'd ever seen Declan look at Bianca like she was a stranger. "Bianca. Finally. Let the mask slip all the way off." Her voice went hard. She said, "After everything I did for you, I raised you. I gave you a family. I let you into this house when your mother died. And this is how you repay me." There it was. The bill. The one I had been quietly refusing to pay for 17 years. I said, Bianca, you didn't raise me. You tolerated me. There's a difference. And nothing in a childhood home is supposed to be a debt. Everly started to cry. Not the performance crying that women in my family had trained into an art form. The stunned crying of a 26-year-old realizing that the house she grew up in had two very different sets of rules depending on whose daughter you were. She said, I didn't know. Cammy. I didn't know about any of it. I thought you just liked doing the gala. I said, Everly. You didn't ask. And that's not the same thing as not knowing. I opened my front door. I said, Take the folio. Leave my house. Do not come back without calling first. And do not call me until you are prepared to apologize without asking for anything in return. Malena Spurl. Bianca gathered the folio with shaking hands. Declan put his hand on Everly's shoulder and steered her toward the door. At the threshold, Everly turned back. She said, Can I text you? I said. Yes. But not tonight. The fallout moved faster than any of them expected. Because one's image is the only thing holding a family together, the truth doesn't need to scream. It just needs to stand in the room. Harriet Volkov brought in an independent auditor within 48 hours. The Low Country Family Legacy Gala was postponed, then quietly restructured under new leadership. Marlene resigned from 2 civic boards before anyone could formally ask her to. Bianca was asked to step back from the gala committee to focus on family matters. Which is Charleston code for you have embarrassed us and we would like you to disappear for a season. A local society column ran a short, careful piece that named no one directly, but used the phrase questions about stewardship 3 times in 4 paragraphs. The Whitaker Group's retirement celebration of my father, which was supposed to dominate the winter social calendar. I got absorbed into the background noise of whispered speculation. My father filed for a legal separation from Bianca 6 weeks later. He did not tell me he was doing it. He just mailed me a short letter. Handwritten. In his architect's handwriting. That said, I should have protected you the first time she edited you out of a photograph. I spent 17 years calling it peacekeeping. It was cowardice. I am sorry. I am not asking you for anything. I read it twice and put it in my desk drawer. I haven't answered yet. I don't know when I will. Everly came to Charleston 2 weeks before Christmas. She asked to meet me at a little bookshop cafe on King Street. She showed up with no makeup and no agenda. She said she had spent her entire life believing her mother's version of me. That I was cold. That I was difficult. That I kept my distance because I was stuck in grief. She said, I thought being the favorite meant being loved more. I didn't realize it also meant getting to not see you. She asked if she could try. Slowly. Tobia's sister told me. Not the kind Bianca had manufactured. A real one. I told her I wasn't ready to promise anything. But I would have coffee with her again in January. She cried a little. I didn't. That's okay. Healing isn't supposed to be symmetrical. I spent Christmas with Sloane and her wife in their apartment downtown, eating gumbo off mismatched plates and watching an old black and white movie none of us had seen before. In February, Harriet Volkov recommended me to a regional arts foundation that needed a rebrand and a capital campaign strategy. The contract was larger than anything the Whitaker Group had ever trusted me with. I signed it on a Tuesday. Here's what I took away from all of it. And I'm going to say it plainly, because I spent too many years being indirect. Being the dependable one in a family that doesn't respect you is not love. It is employment without a paycheck. If the only time your family notices you is when something needs to be fixed, hosted, covered for, or carried, then you are not cherished. You are staffed. And the minute you stop showing up for your shift, you will find out very quickly whether the people around you actually saw you or only saw the work you did for them. So, tell me, if your family humiliated you in public and then came knocking a week later because they needed your name to keep their reputation intact, would you open the door? Because I didn't. And for the first time in my adult life, my house was quiet in a way that felt like mine.